anyone there out there actually still likes reading videos, but I do. I love to hear people read. So, I just went and grabbed this one off my shelf. I haven't even started this one, but I've heard good things about it. It's pretty old. So, I thought I'd just read a little bit for you right now. It's called This Present Darkness by Frank Peretti. And I've read some of Peretti's other books, and I really like them. Him and Ted Dekker. Awesome. I think they've had some movies lately made of some of their books. But anyways, I'm just starting. I'm sorry if you catch me kind of rocking like this, or rocking like this. Yeah, I have a nervous, it's not even a nervous habit. It's just when I'm sitting still, I constantly rock. I don't know if anyone else does that. It makes me look like I'm insane. Like I should be in an asylum or something. And it runs in the family. Me and my sister, my mom, my grandma used to do it. I don't know. It's weird, but you'll probably catch me. I'm already doing it. Catch me doing it. Okay, I'll try not to. Okay, sit. Chapter 1. Late on a full moon Sunday night, the two figures in work clothes appeared on Highway 27, just outside the small college town of Ashton. They were dark, at least 7 feet, strongly built, perfectly proportioned. One was dark-haired and sharp-featured, the other blonde and powerful. From half a mile away, they looked toward the town, regarding the something sounds of gaiety from the storefronts, streets, and alleys within. They started walking. It was the time of the Ashton Summer Festival, the town's yearly exercise in frivolity and chaos. Its way of saying thank you, come again, good luck, and nice to have you to the 800 or so college students at Whitmore College who would be getting their long-awaited summer break from classes. Most would pack up and go home, but all would definitely stay at least long enough to take in the festivities, the street disco, the carnival rides, the nickel movies, and whatever else could be had, over or under the table for kicks. It was a wild time, a chance to get drunk, pregnant, beat up, ripped off, and sick all at the same night. In the middle of town, as a community-conscious landowner had opened up a vacant lot and permitted a traveling troupe of enterprising migrants to set up their carnival with rides, booths, and porta potties. The rides were best viewed in the dark, an escapade in gaily lit rust, powered by unmuffled tractor engines that competed with the wavering carnival music, which squawked loudly from somewhere in the middle of it all. But on this warm summer night, the roaming cotton candy masses were out to enjoy. The Ferris wheel slowly turned, hesitated for boarding, turned some more for unboarding, then took a few rotations to give its passengers their money's worth. A merry-go-round spun in a brightly lit, gaudy circle, the peeling and dismembered horses still prancing to the melody of the canned calliope. Carnival-goers threw baseballs at baskets, dimes at ashtrays, darts at balloons, and money to the wind, along with hastily assembled, ramshackle midway where hawkers ranted the same try your luck chatter. I'm sorry, I'm a terrible reader. Chatter for each passerby. The two visitors stood tall and silent in the middle of it all, wondering how a town of 12,000 people, including college students, could produce such a vast, teeming crowd. The usually quiet population had turned out in droves, augmented by diversion seekers from elsewhere, until the streets, taverns, stores, alleys, and parking spots were jammed. Anything was allowed, and the illegal was ignored. The police did have their hands full, but each rowdy vandal, drunk, or hooker in cuffs only meant a dozen more loose and roaming around the town. The festival, reaching a crescendo now, on its last night, was like a terrible storm that couldn't be stopped. One could only wait for it to blow over, and there would be plenty to clean up afterwards. The two visitors made their way slowly through the people-packed carnival, listening to the talk, watching the activity. They were inquisitive about this town, so they took their time observing here and there, on the right, on the left, before and behind. The milling throngs were moving around them like swirling garments in a washing machine, meandering from this side of the street to the other in an unpredictable, never-ending cycle. The two tall men kept eyeing the crowd. They were looking for someone. "There," said the dark-haired man. They both saw her. She was young, very pretty, but also very unsettled, looking this way and that, a camera in her hands, and a stiff-lipped expression on her face. The two men hurried through the crowd and stood beside her. She didn't notice them. "You know," the dark-haired one said to her, "you might try looking over there." With that simple comment, he guided her by a hand on her shoulder toward the one particular booth on the midway. She stepped through the grass and candy wrappers, moving toward the booth where some teenagers were egging each other on and popping balloons with darts. None of that interested her, but then some shadows moving stealthily behind the booth did. She held her camera steady, took a few more silent, careful steps, and then quickly raised the camera to her eye. The flash of the bulb lit up the trees behind the booth as the two men hurried away to their next appointment. If you'll give me just a second, I'm going to get a stick of gum, and I'll chew that while I'm reading a little bit more of it. Just a second. Wrigley's Winter Fresh. I'm going to pull you a little closer so you can hear me better. I'm not sure how the audio on that phone works. Am I too close? I think I'll get really close up here in a minute too. See how that sounds? They moved smoothly, unfalteringly, passing through the main part of town at a brisk pace. Their final destination was a mile past the center of town, right on Poplar Street, and up to the top of Morgan Hill, about a half mile. Practically no time at all had passed before they stood before the little white church on its postage envelope, with its well-groomed lawn and dainty Sunday school and service billboard. Across the top of the little billboard was the name, Ashton Community Church, and in black letters hastily painted over whatever name used to be there it said, Henry L. Bush, Pastor. They looked back. From this lofty hill, one could look over the whole town and see it spread from city limit to city limit. To the west sparkled the caramel-colored carnival. To the east stood the dignified and matronly Whitmore College campus along Highway 27. Main Street through town were the storefront offices, the small-town-sized Sears, a few gas stations at War, a True Value Hardware, the local newspaper, several small family businesses. From here, the town looked so typically American, small, innocent, and harmless, like the background for every Norman Rockwell painting. But the two visitors did not perceive with eyes only. Even from this vantage point, the true substratum of Ashton weighed very heavily upon their spirits and minds. They could feel it. Restless, strong, growing, very designed and purposeful. A very special kind of evil. It was not unlike either of them to ask questions, to study, to probe. More often than not, it came with their job. So they naturally hesitated in their business, pausing to wonder, why here? But only for an instant. It could have been some acute sensitivity, an instinct, a very faint, but for them indiscernible impression. But it was enough to make them both instantly vanish around the corner of the church, melding themselves against the beveled siding, almost invisible there in the dark. They didn't speak, they didn't move, but they watched with a piercing gaze as someone approached. The night scene of the quiet street was a collage of stark blue moonlight and bottomless shadows. But one shadow did not stir with the wind, as did the tree shadows, and neither did it stand still, as did the building shadows. It crawled, quivered, moved along the street toward the church, while any light it crossed seemed to sink into its blackness, as if it were a breach torn in space. But this shadow had a shape, an animated, creature-like shape, and as it neared the church, sounds could be heard. The scratching of claws along the ground, and the faint rustling of breeze-blown, membranous wings wafting just above the creature's shoulders. It had arms and it had legs, but it seemed to move without them, crossing the street and mounting the front steps of the church. Its leering bulbous eyes reflected the stark blue light of the full moon with their own jaundiced glow. The gnarled head protruded from hunched shoulders, and wisps of rancid red breath seized in labored hisses through rows of jagged fangs. It either laughed or it coughed. The wheezes puffing out from deep within its throat could have been either. From its crawling posture, it reared up on its legs and looked about the quiet neighborhood, black leathery jaws pulling back into a hideous death mask grin. It moved toward the front door. The black hand passed through the door like a spear through liquid. The body hobbled forward and penetrated the door, but only halfway. Suddenly, as if colliding with a speeding wall, the creature was knocked backwards and into a raging tumble down the steps, the glowing red breath tracing a corkscrew trail through the air. With an eerie cry of rage and indignation, it gathered itself up off the sidewalk and stared at the strange door that would not let it pass through. Then the membranes on its back began to billow, enfolding great bodies of air, and it flew with a roar headlong at the door, through the door, into the foyer, and into a cloud of white-hot light. The creature screamed and covered its eyes, then felt itself being grabbed by a huge, powerful vice in the hand. In an instant, it was hurling through space like a rag doll, outside again, forcibly ousted. The wings hummed in a blur as it banked sharply, and a flying turn and headed for the door again, red vapors chugging in dashes and streaks from its nostrils, its talons bared and poised for attack, a ghostly siren of a scream rising in its throat. Like an arrow through the target, like a bullet through a board, it streaked through the door, and instantly felt its insides tearing loose. There was an explosion of suffocating vapor, one final scream, and the flailing of withering arms and legs. Then there was nothing at all, except the ebbing stench of sulfur and the two strangers suddenly inside the church. The big blond man replacing a shining sword as the white light that surrounded him faded away. A spirit of harassment, he asked, or doubt, or fear, who knows? And that was one of the smaller ones? I've not seen one smaller. No, indeed. And just how many would you say there are? More. Much more than we. And everywhere. Never idle. So I've seen, the big man sighed. But what are they doing here? We've never seen such concentration before. Not here. Oh, the reason won't be hidden for long. I'm getting too close. He looked through the foyer doors and toward the sanctuary. Let's see this man of God. They turned from the door and walked through the small foyer. The bulletin board on the wall carried requests for groceries for a needy family, some babysitting, and prayer for a sick missionary. A large bill announced a congregational business meeting for next Friday. On the other wall, the record Weekly offerings indicated the offerings were down from last week, so was the attendance, from 61 to 42. Down the short and narrow aisle they went, passing the orderly ranks of dark-stained planks and slat pews, toward the front of the sanctuary, where one small spotlight illuminated. That's not what that says, but we'll go with that. A rustic 2x4 cross hanging above the baptistry. In the center of the worn-carpeted platform stood the little sacred desk, the pulpit, with a Bible laid open upon it. These were humble furnishings, functional but not at all elaborate, revealing either humility on the part of the people or neglect. Let's see how much I got left here. Okay. I think I'll get closer now and whisper. I think whispering sounds a little nicer than soft spoken reading, but just come right up to you. Gotta get right up in your ear. Then the first sound was added to the picture, a soft mumbled sobbing from the end of the right pew. There, kneeling in earnest prayer, his head resting on the hard wooden bench, and his hands clenched with fervency, was a young man. Very young, the blond man thought at first. Young and vulnerable. It all showed in his countenance. Now the very picture of pain, grief, and love. His lips moved without sound as names, petitions, and praises poured forth with passionate tears. The two couldn't help but just stand there for a moment, watching, studying, pondering. The little warrior, said the dark-haired one. The big blond man formed the words himself in silence, looking down at the contrite man in prayer. Yes, he observed, this is the one. Even now he's interceding, standing before the Lord, for the sake of the people, for the town. Almost every night he's here. At that remark, the big man smiled. He's not so insignificant, but he's the only one. He's alone. No, the big man shook his head. There are others. There are always others. They just have to be found. For now, his single vigilant prayer is the beginning. He's going to be hurt, you know that. And so will the newspaperman. And so will we. But will we win? The big man's eyes seemed to burn with a rekindled fire. We will fight. We will fight, his friend agreed. They stood over the kneeling warrior on either side, and at that moment, little by little, like the bloom of a flower, white light began to fill the room. It illuminated the cross on the back wall, slowly, brought out the colors and green in every blank of every pew, and rose in intensity until the once plain and humble sanctuary came alive with an unearthly beauty. The walls glimmered, the worn rugs glowed, and the little pulpit stood tall and stark as a sentinel backlit by the sun. And now, the two men were brilliantly white, their former clothing transfigured by garments that seemed to burn with intensity. Their faces were bronzed and glowing, their eyes shone like fire, and each man wore a glistening golden belt, from which hung a flashing sword. They placed their hands upon the shoulders of the young man, and then, like a gracefully